Welcome back to Barham Engines, guys. I'm Lee. The weather is lovely. And we've got another busy week ahead. So guys, first on the agenda for the Monday morning, we've got the two Jaguar heads here. I'm going to give Isaac a lesson on how to do the clearances on this. In our last video, I noticed some of you guys said, look, when the heads are bent like that, don't you have trouble with the cam alignment? And the answer is very rarely yes, you can do. But on a head this deep, you normally find that the head face sort of bows. But by the time it gets up here, it's not that bad, if at all. All you can do really is the first thing we do is put the cams in, torque the bolts up on the cam caps, and just try turning the cams. Bearing in mind here we've got two cams, and this chain is driving both. So if we put this ratchet in here, I mean literally two fingers, and the whole thing is turning. And it's the same on the other one, so there's no problem with the alignment on that whatsoever. Yeah, like I say, it's not so much the head that bends a lot of the time, it's just the face, and the gasket sort of eats in. So no, these are absolutely fine. I've got no problem with those. So yeah, going to give Isaac a lesson on doing the clearances on here, because obviously it's shimmed. What we normally do is we check them and sort of write the figures down. If they're not that far out, then we'll just take it off the end of the valve stem. I said to you in the last video, we've got a machine over there to do that. And as long as it doesn't run into, you don't run into the issues of the bucket touching on either the spring retainer or the collets, then it'll be absolutely fine. And at least then, you know, once you've done it, you've still got all the original shims in that are the same size. So that's what we'll be doing this morning. We've got the Cosworth cylinder head here. So this is the Cosworth head that's going onto that block. We've just got to get this one assembled today. We've got new guides in it. We've cut the seats. It's been solder blasted. Just going to give it a lick of silver. We've refaced it. Everything's good to go. So hopefully I should have that head on that block today. So I said in the last video I would show you the progress on the Jag block. Hopefully get the bits today or tomorrow for this. So quite excited to get this one together now. But I just thought I'd show you it. It's all cleaned up, look. We've given it a lick of paint. The reason we paint these aluminium blocks and heads, guys, by the way, is although when you've solder blasted it, etc., it does come up nice. But you know what aluminium's like, it doesn't stay nice. So it's only got to get moisture on. Before you know it, it's powdered up and it looks a bit grotty. So the exposed bits, we just paint, and then it just stays nice and it's easy to keep clean. Yeah, it just looks fresh. So as you can see in here, guys, I said that these two, when measured, these two here sort of measure up to a couple of thou, slightly oval, but the customer's been made aware. We've had this before. I did a V8 M5 last year, if you can remember that. And that had the same problem. All we did, put brand new pistons in. That's all you could do. Built it up. And that guy's been all over Europe with his. He's had no problem, no oil consumption whatsoever. So fingers crossed, this should all be good. Usually a telltale sign if the bores are bad. Now we've deglazed it, you can normally feel like a bit of a lip up the top, but as you can see with this one, it's absolutely clean. And on the other side, see the bores look absolutely fresh now. So yeah, that was the only problem really, just a couple of thou on these two, but no, everything's great. The block faces are fine. I've stuck a straight edge on that. These liners that are in the cast iron liner, they're about sort of a couple of thou proud, so didn't want to start going ahead and facing the block, but I don't think it needs it, to be honest with you. It's flat, and yeah, it should be good. So pistons arrived today, got the rods over here. As you can see, what we normally do, I don't know whether I've told you this before, so all the pistons, obviously the old pistons are off the rods. We've just got to clean these up. But you see where those stamps are in the cap there? So that cap there would be number 5 rod, and the marks that we've stamped are facing towards the front. And what we call the front is the front. So that would be where your front pulley would be. I mean, some engines I know it sounds a bit funny that, but some engines like Renault's, they will label the front as the back. So it doesn't matter what engine it is, if it comes apart, we always stamp it like that. So see there, we've got number 1 and the stamp is facing towards the front. Then there's no confusion, you know exactly where they go. So pistons, bearings turning up today. We've got the cradle and what have you down there all cleaned up and painted. Yeah, apart from that, manifolds down here, give those a paint of high temperature black. So apart from the oil pan there, which I haven't cleaned up, we've got a new oil pump coming anyway. So yeah, really excited to get this one together. Oh, you guys, in the last video I said about the big end and the main bolts. Really helpful. You've given me 2 or 3 places in the UK that I can get those from. So I'm going to get those ordered first thing this morning. So really appreciate that, guys. Told you that I do always read all your messages. And sort of half the time I take them as educational. So none of us are complete experts and know everything. And I understand on some of these engines, you guys will probably know where to get things more than I will. So I take that as information. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. So I had a phone call last week on Tuesday, Wednesday, I think, of another guy who wants to send a Cosworth engine in. So I booked the pallet service to pick it up. I think that's getting picked up today. Should be here tomorrow, hopefully. So we need to get this engine out the way. And also the one over there, we're still waiting on the turbocharger. So I'll be in touch with Vince today, see what's happening with that. And we can get them 2 on their way and make room for the next one. Right, so Isaac's had his lesson on doing the clearances. Fortunately, we've only had to, because we had to lap the valves in, they weren't too far out. So they'd only sort of closed up here and there, about 2, maybe 3 thou at worst. So I've just basically given him a lesson on how to use the grind at the other end of the grinder there, just to, there's no sort of set measurement with this machine. Like a lot of our other machines, it's just a case of feeling it, and you can you end up feeling and then testing and checking the clearance. You end up knowing by feel how much you're taking off the end of the stem. So like I say, it's only a couple of thou, but these are all done now. He's put the cams back in loosely, because the cams have obviously got to come out, because the head bolt holes are underneath the cams there. So these are all ready to go back on the vehicle. So that's a good one. I don't think Stuart's in for the rest of this week. Pete may be back tomorrow, but I'll whip them over there as soon as he is. Right, the Cosworth, I've got the head back together, as you can see. The head is on and torqued down. Cams are sitting in the top, all the new buckets in. The only thing I'm waiting for now is new bearings in the end of the cams. This one here in particular, you can see that. It's absolutely shot, that is. So I think next on the agenda for this engine, if it carried on running, was probably break the end off the cam, and we could have the same scenario as we had on that engine over there, where it does all the valves. So yeah, just ordered those from Burton Power, and they're on their way. Once they turn up, we can I'm going to get a few more bits on this afternoon down here, and then once they're on, belt on, pulleys on, turn it upside down, get the sump on, what have you, and that's all ready to rock and roll then. Right, I've just had a lad in here, and I'm not going to mention who the dealer is, but he's got his car at a main dealer's. The car that he's got is quite a nice car, probably worth about 6,000 quid, something like that. He basically come over and he said, how much can you do pistons for? And I said, first of all, what's the vehicle? So he told me. And I said, and secondly, what's the problem? He said, well, the main dealer have got it. He's basically done a few things which have cost me quite a bit of money so far, but they've basically come to the conclusion now that the pistons are gone. And I said, when you say gone, what do you mean? And he said, well, there's a chunk missing off the ring. And I said, I thought, I know what he means. He means the ring lands are gone. So I said, have you got any pictures of it? Yeah, I've got a picture of the piston. But when he showed me the piston, it was black with carbon. Yet it broke 2 big chunks out of the ringland, but the skirt of the piston, so the side of the piston that meets the bore, was wiped. It was absolutely mullered. And I said, look, you need a little bit more than some pistons. And he said, oh, right, they said I need pistons. And I said, what's the story of it? He said, well, when I took it in, it was using oil and it had a misfire on sort of idle. And I said, right, so what did they diagnose? What did they say? He said, well, first of all, they'd done a few checks and then they walnut blasted the engine and give him a bill for about 800 quid for what they did so far. Still misfiring and what have you. So I don't know whether they thought carbon was down the ports holding the valves over. I haven't got a clue at this stage. I said, have you got any paperwork so far? He said, well, no, not really. Just this bill for walnut blasting and doing some checks. They've took the cylinder head off it, got the piston out, and you've got this photograph that he showed me. So I said, look, this thing looks like it's got really hot to me, maybe have an injector issue. But why did they walnut blast it and go ahead and basically do about £1,000's worth of work without doing a compression test or leak down test or anything like that? He said, I have no idea at this stage. I said, well, what have they said to you? And he said, well, it needs the engine rebuilding and they can do it. It's going to be about 6,000 quid. I went for a new engine. He said, no. I said, well, they're not going to be rebuilding the engine. If they rebuild the engine, they're not going to be getting it reconditioned, or they're not going to be doing any machining themselves. So the dealership in question usually bring their stuff to us. So it's all a little bit vague at the moment. I said, but I'm just very surprised that they've gone and done about £1,000's worth of work. And so almost, I don't know whether I'm getting the full story or what, but it looks like it could be a potential rebuild. I said, look, you're probably looking for us to go through that. It's going to need boring. It's going to need the block face in. The head's definitely need gone through. I suspect you've got a burnt out valve. I suspect it needs a rebore. The bores will be all over the place. The block face is going to need doing. Your crank's going to need polishing at the very least, and obviously new bearings. But by the look of the state of the piston, although it's had blow by and the ring lands are gone, it doesn't look like it's had a very good service history. So this car done is probably worth £6,000. I said, but realistically, you're going to be getting on towards that to do the engine properly. So it's how much sort of sentimental value the car's got, really. So at this stage, because he's saying that the dealers have basically sent him away or sent him over to us to get a price on a set of pistons, or can we get pistons, I'm assuming that they're just going to put it together with new pistons. There's no talk at this stage, unless the customer's not really getting the full gist of what they're on about. But at this stage, firstly, knowing the main dealer it is, I would have thought they would have been on to us if they've got an engine recondition. Otherwise, they're just going to price him for a brand new engine. They're not going to get in amongst this engine. It's very rarely these days that the main dealer sort of gets in amongst the engine if they're not going to do anything about it. They'll just do a compression test, do a few tests, and they'll just quote him for a new engine. So I'm assuming at this point that because they sent him away to get a set of pistons, or a price for a set of pistons, that they're just going to put it back together with pistons. But just from looking at that piston, I am telling you that this engine needs a bit more than just putting back together with a set of pistons. So I'm very surprised if that's what they're doing. But as I say, I'm just sort of taking it with a pinch of salt at the minute, because the customer, in fairness, didn't really know what he was talking about. So I've said, look, go away, get some quotes or estimates off them, itemised, get a bit of paperwork as to what they've done, what they've found, send them to me and let me have a look at them. Because yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. So we may get that job, we may not. Just struck me a little bit as to why they're even contemplating putting it back together with a set of new pistons. Way beyond that. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We're back in a couple of days for another video. So until then, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you then. Take care.